what can trigger that spiral that we can get into where we seem to just notice everything that's going wrong, and particularly related to teachers, why it happened and what we can do about it. So that's the three parts. When we do this, it's so common to do this, and it's something I hold my hands up. I used to do this all the time over the smallest of things, and you know, I think if somebody had said to me, you know, like, oh, just think positive, I'd probably want to punch them in the face. You know, our brain has a filter. So we are bombarded with information from outside our bodies and inside our bodies constantly. And our brain's just not capable of interpreting it all and making sense of it all. So what it does is it distorts, it deletes, and it generalizes the information based on what you already believe to be true. So we always start with a quote. And this week's quote is, sometimes when things fall apart, they're actually falling into place.
That's it. There can be a positive found in every negative, and we have to learn that even an obstacle can actually lead us into a better direction.
Yeah, totally. So we are going to look at it in about 3 parts. The first part is, what can trigger that spiral that we can get into where we seem to just notice everything that's going wrong, and particularly related to teachers, why it happened and what we can do about it. So that's the 3 parts. So to start, I've got some examples of things that might trigger a spiral. So life is full of challenges and, you know, what can happen is we can see a challenge and then it can change our filter, and then we can start spotting just challenges, and viewing things that can sometimes be benign. You know, sometimes we can read emails, we can read people's body language, or someone not getting back to us, or various things like that, that we then associate with this initial setback when it's not connected at all. So some things that could trigger that downward spiral, and how that can spiral. I've got like a little example. So if a parent sends a negative email or makes a complaint about you, so your thoughts might spiral that they don't appreciate me, they don't understand what their kids like in school, I'm failing the kids, the head's going to think I'm a rubbish teacher, and it can spiral in many different ways. But that's the kind of thing. It can start off, you know, as an initial response, and then if we stay there and give it energy, it can get worse and worse, can't it? And end up with, I'm a bad teacher, or I'm not good enough. Being observed when we're already stretched or not expecting it. So having those statements like, I can't do this today. They'll think I'm not good enough. Why do I even try? What's the point? They don't like me. I always get, you know, that they always pick something out. I always get something wrong. And if we're in that spiral, we're not going to perform at our best, are we?
Yeah. That's the thing. I think with any kind of negative thought, they use the phrase, you know, I run a bad luck, because the first thing that goes wrong can actually start on this spiral effect, like of other things going wrong. But it's because you're in the mindset of things going wrong. I've seen this in jobs before. You know, I've done it myself, and I've seen workers doing it when I'm a supervisor. They make one mistake, and the whole day you make mistake after mistake, because all you can think about is that one mistake, and you're afraid to make another mistake, so then you keep making mistakes. But this is your mindset. If you can actually just take, I suppose, ownership of the first mistake and learn from it, you can actually be better the next time. But it's just about flipping that switch and changing it from a negative into a positive.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to go through some tips and talk through how to do that and why it happens as well. So some other things that might set you off on a spiral, if you've got a child who's unsettled and it escalates, you don't seem to be able to calm the child down, and then it has an effect on the other children. You might be in your head thinking, you know, what if somebody sees? What if they think I can't control the class? What if this child doesn't like me? What if I have to speak to this parent, and the parent's not going to be responsive, and you can create a whole future in the moment, can't you? That's not even, a false one. Or it could end up being the future if,
But that's the thing. We fear things that may not ever happen and don't actually exist in the moment. But our thoughts create our reality. So anything that you fear or worry about, you're effectively manifesting into your life. So if you can change the thoughts into a positive one, you can actually manifest a positive outcome rather than an negative one.
Yeah, and we use the example of that time when I walked into the tryout room, and my initial thought was, oh, I can't, I don't belong here, and if I'd stayed in that spiral and looked for more evidence of why I couldn't be there, or shouldn't be there, or don't belong there, or I'm not good enough, then I'm in my head, for starters, on something else. So I'm not concentrating on what I should be doing, which is winning the fight, but it makes you feel, ugh, you're not going to perform at your best if you're berating yourself in your brain, are you? But we do this. It's so common to do this, and it's something I hold my hands up. I used to do this all the time over the smallest of things, and I think if somebody had said to me, like, oh, just think positive, I'd probably want to punch them in the face.
Yeah.
And so we get it. We get that, like, sometimes the truth is difficult to hear, isn't it? But we are both living proof that you can make massive changes if you can just accept that this is the truth that we're telling you.
But that's it. Like, I used to be a complete pessimist. If it could go wrong, it would go wrong. And I saw life as a constant series of obstacles and challenges and bad luck. But I was perceiving that, and then I was creating it because I thought that's the only way that life was. So I actually have to retrain my brain into positivity. And, it actually really does work. Like, I went from being completely negative all the time, fearing everything all the time, being triggered by happy people or happy morning people especially, and then turning into one. Because, I used to think happy people or positive people, there was something wrong with their own jokes or something. They can't be, that's not normal to be happy or positive. I was genuinely triggered by these kind of people. And now I do it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I remember the first few times, like, I started singing in the morning, like, just with music in my head or dancing or something. And I'm like, who's the one? Like, I was like, who am I? And like, I used to hate people like this. But it actually does work. If you retrain your brain, you can turn into the people you thought you couldn't.
Yeah, and we're going to give you guidance on how to do that, because when you get going with it and you're consistent with it, you will see massive changes. It's powerful stuff. It's simple stuff, but it's powerful. So other things might be forgetting a deadline, something small, and then perceiving how you're viewed for that. So you might think, oh, now my phase leader thinks I'm rubbish, I'm no good, I can't keep up, blah, 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 And actually, you're projecting your own berating on someone else because they might not be thinking that at all. And I would hope that if your line manager in a job had an issue with your work, that they would speak to you about that in the right way, And so if they're not coming, then, oh, you forgot that deadline, and you hand it in a little bit late, and that's the end of it for them. They've probably what we have to remember is managers are managing lots of people, so they probably don't think about you that much. We think that people think about us far more than they actually do. They're busy in their own lives thinking about themselves, just like we're thinking about us a lot of the time, But you can create this. Often when we have negative beliefs about ourselves, we project them onto other people because we aren't able to admit to ourselves that that's how we feel about ourselves sometimes. So we think we can mind read people, but we're not always successful. We're often not successful at that. But we'll talk about how in psychology we know that actually we interpret things how we expect, but I will talk about that a bit later. Colleagues might be a bit offhand with you, and so we're, oh, what have I done wrong? Sometimes I remember when I used to walk into work and maybe the head might have not said hello, or she might have a cross face, or one of my colleagues didn't acknowledge me, or answered me in a short way. I would be like, oh, what have I done? And then I would be searching my brain and writing a whole narrative over why I was responsible for that reaction. And actually, I don't know what's going on with their life. They might have had an awful morning. I mean, one person in my school, I think it was this week, had a car crash on the way to school. Like, it wasn't their fault, but you don't know what people have had to go through to get through the door in the morning, and our line managers are not immune from that either. They've got families, they've got stuff going on, and we shouldn't interpret every facial expression as being about us. And when we are in a certain mindset, you absolutely do, and then you worry about not essentially a false thing all day. Just because someone was a little bit stressed in the morning and didn't notice you, and it was nothing to do with you at all. And we do this a lot, I think. I certainly did. Let's have a look. Oh, trying to start something. So you might be starting your mindset journey, and you're wanting to implement something. So you might be like, all right, I'm going to start putting a boundary in place, or I'm going to have some time to do this self-care thing. I want to start some meditation. But then, to do that, you have to leave earlier than you normally would. Then you start feeling guilty about that. And then you're looking at people's expressions. Are they thinking about me differently? You're reading how somebody talks to you. They might be having a stressful day, but you're like, oh, I bet they're annoyed with me because I didn't stay late last night when everyone else did. We can interpret other people's behaviors as being about us and our choices. I'm letting the team down, that kind of thinking. So here's some things that we might see as hostile, because what happens, you might have a genuine challenge. You might get a new child into your class in the middle of the school year, and they might come with many challenges. I mean, even having a new child in your class is extra work anyway, but particularly if they come, maybe they have some special needs, maybe they're not English speaking, and there's a lot of work that goes into that to be able to support them. So you might have something like that, or it might be a challenge at home. And it's a genuine challenge. It's a genuine thing that's happened. But then we can go into a mindset of spotting everything that maybe is completely benign. It's not aimed at us. It's not hostile, but we might view it as hostile. So getting feedback from the senior leadership team or our line managers. So they might say, oh, you need to tighten up, we need to get back with the behavior expectations. The class has been a bit noisy. Now, you don't know if they've told everybody that, but even if they've just told you that, we can view it as they think I'm rubbish. They think I can't control the class. When in actual fact, they're just supporting you to have some consistency, or just, giving you a bit of a reminder, and that's helping you. It's how we view it. Let me have a look. There's sometimes, if like parents are not responding to you, we might think that they either don't care about their kid, or they're angry with us, or they don't want to speak to us, but actually they've got their own life going on and they're just too busy. The same with staff. Maybe they're not replying to messages or emails, and we think that we're being ghosted where people are just busy. A child's difficult behavior, sometimes we can take it quite personally, when the kid's got stuff going on. And it's not actually sometimes children that have got a lot going on that can be a bit challenging for you. It might be because they can actually feel safe. You get that with with kids that are neurospicy. Often they go to school and they mask all day, and then they come home and let it all out, and it can feel personal. You can feel like, oh, well, you'll behave for so-and-so, but you won't behave for me. I've said colleagues not replying. Emails are such a difficult thing because they can just be, well, like we've said before, you can read it different ways at different times of the day, depending on how you're feeling, but two people can read it differently. And the difficulty with text messages and emails is you can't read the tone, can you? And we use like somebody's voice and expression to, are you being friendly or are you being unhappy with me? And we haven't got that. So what we do is we project how we're feeling onto how that was written. Being left out of conversations or decisions, thinking it's, oh, they don't like me, but actually they just didn't have time to consult you because it was something that had to be done quickly. Yeah, so that's some of the things that might happen in school, that, you know, you might be in a spiral, something's gone wrong, and then you're noticing all these other things going wrong, but maybe they're not really going wrong. Maybe we're just viewing them a certain way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. We see things as obstacles or challenges, but they don't actually have to be obstacles or challenges. Tony Robbins calls them, it says like, you know, call your obstacle your challenge, see it as a worthy opponent. You know,
Yeah.
what can you gain from this? Like, you know, so for example, with a new child in your class, like you're getting the an opportunity to help another child. You know, instead of seeing it as a burden or more stress to you, think of what you can do to expand this child's knowledge, what you can do and what you can learn from that child as well, especially if there are special needs there. You know, there's growth to be found in anything that does challenge us. And that's where we need to flip that switch.
Yeah.
Is ask what I can learn from this, or what can I do to, what is this showing me, or is this redirecting me in any way, or what can I do to make this expand me? Instead of seeing it as a challenge and closing you off or making you small, use it to make yourself expand or grow.
Yeah. So it's finding the lesson in it, isn't it? You know, what was it trying to teach me? So, why this happens. So a large part of why this happens is because we, our brain has a filter. So we are bombarded with information from outside our bodies and inside our bodies constantly. And our brain's just not capable of interpreting it all and making sense of it all. So what it does is it distorts, it deletes, and it generalizes the information based on what you already believe to be true. So, for example, if you think a member of staff doesn't like you, then your brain will cherry pick the information, it will distort it, and it will delete contrary information so that you get what you expect from that interaction with them. Now, that's not to say that there isn't people in the world that don't like you. You know, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying every interaction, but that we have to be really mindful that we can color all our experiences with our deep beliefs and how we're feeling at the time. Just like emails, if we read an email and we're already stressed or already upset, or we get it from a particular member of staff, perhaps that we feel like we've had a challenge with, we can read that email completely differently to what somebody else might read it, or that we might read it if it had been before the challenge that had occurred. So we have to be really mindful of whether we are seeing what we expect.
Yeah, and that is the
What
thing.
we
Our
expect
beliefs
is
are
bad.
learned. Sorry?
If we expect that something bad is going to happen, we're going to be looking for that evidence. That's
Yeah.
how the brain works. So that's why we say it's important, you know, this positivity thing, and it's not toxic positivity. We're against that. So toxic positivity is saying everything's all right when it's not all right, you know. So you might be feeling really stressed and you're going, I'm okay. That's toxic positivity. If you're feeling something, you've got to respect that feeling and unpick it and stuff. But that in the day to day, and even with the big things, but you need to start with the day to day first before you can go to the really big challenges. If you can turn something that was a challenge into a positive experience, you are going to not only be able to deal with that situation better, but you're less likely to get into a spiral of looking for more things that have gone wrong. So that's why we have to be intentional, and we can change our filter through things like affirmations and meditation and journaling and self-awareness, reframing. So what you were talking about is reframing the idea of a challenge. Do you want to tell us about that a bit?
Yeah, so like, you know, we've learned this negativity. We've been conditioned to believe everything is going wrong, everything is a challenge, or life is a struggle, or, you know, we're in this constant state of fear. But when we just take a step back and see that there can be a positive found in the negative. Like, for example, like my exhaust was loose on my car last week, and I have to obviously bring it into the garage to get it fixed and all that kind of stuff. And initially, a couple of years ago, when I was in my negative energy, that would have made me spiral deeply, and I could have even just freaked out, dropped back home, and just stood in my little box for a little while and just not done anything about it. Just completely went around on things, the money side of things, everything just going wrong and wrong and wrong. And I would have made a mountain out of a molehill. Mm-hmm. Whereas I took a step back and I realised, okay, this happened on the way into town. This happened and I heard the rattle. I heard the noise. I was able to drive to the garage then to ask about it. Then I was able to book in the appointment. Then I was able to get it booked in and done in a few hours rather than it taking a full day or a few days. You know, so I started to see all the little positives in that. And like instead of then going into this negative spiral or this fear-based energy, I was able to feel grateful for it happening because it reflected stuff within me that I needed to heal as well. Mm-hmm. So it was actually lessons there that actually connected to my own internal life as well. So I started to see, I'd be grateful that my exhaust nearly fell off my car and that it didn't fall off and cause an accident or anything like that. That it happened the way it did. You know, and if you looked at that situation in the negative, it was like the end of the world kind of scenario, like, oh my God, this is all going wrong. Whereas I actually figured, you know, it actually led me to things going right. And that can happen in kind of any challenge we get or any obstacle. It can be a redirection. A redirection if you're on the wrong path. It can be a redirection to show you where to go next. So it's like a stepping stone into your growth. So if you can actually take a step back and ask yourself, what is this showing me? What is this trying to teach me? You can actually see that there is a lesson to be found in any challenge that you go through.